Hi economists, this short video will present the theoretical model of Keynesian economist based on the work of John Maynard Keynes, one of the famous economists of the 20th century. The IB concepts of scarcity, interdependence and intervention can easily be applied in here. Keynes' model differs to the monetarist New Classical as it shows the possibility for economies to get stuck in a position of short-run equilibrium for long periods of time. Keynesian economists argue, unlike monetarist New Classical economists, that resource prices do not fall easily, even over long periods of time. This is especially so for wages due to factors such as labour contracts, minimum wage legislation, worker and union resistance, and employer resistance due to fear of low morale of their workers. Keynesians also argue other product prices do not fall easily due to firms' fears of a price war. If wages and prices do not fall easily, this means that the economy may get stuck in the short run. The Keynesian aggregate supply curve has three sections. In section 1, real GDP is low and the price level remains constant as real GDP increases. There is a lot of unemployment and resources and labour and capital and spare capacity when you're in section 1. Inflexible wages and prices are shown graphically by this horizontal section. The inflexibility of wages and prices in the downward direction makes it hard for the economy to move into the long run when experiencing a deflationary gap in section 1 of the curve. And I'll illustrate that more in a minute. In section 2, real GDP increases are matched by increases in the price level. As output increases, so does employment of resources until there is no longer spare capacity. Resource prices rise and costs of production increase. Growing output means growing prices. In section 2, the economy reaches full employment level of real GDP, also known as potential output, and unemployment is at the natural rate. Real GDP can continue to increase until it reaches section 3. I'll illustrate these equilibriums in a minute. In section 3, the aggregate supply curve becomes vertical at the maximum level of output, indicating that real GDP reaches a level beyond which it cannot increase anymore without the price level rising rapidly. Real GDP can no longer increase because firms are using the maximum amount of labour and all other resources in the economy. Macroeconomic equilibrium in the Keynesian model is determined at the point where the aggregate demand curve intersects the Keynesian aggregate supply curve. To recap on the three states. When the aggregate demand curve intersects the aggregate supply curve in the horizontal section, such as shown here, output is less than potential output, which indicates a deflationary or recessionary gap with unemployment greater than the natural rate. When in this section of the curve, increases in aggregate demand do not necessarily increase price level. Unlike the monetarist New Classical model, where increases in aggregate demand always increase the price level. And this section relates to either a contraction or a trough in the business cycle. In the next diagram, we can see an inflationary gap where there is strong aggregate demand and unemployment is below the natural rate and the price level rises and increases. This relates to an expansion or a peak in the business cycle. In the final diagram, this shows when the economy has achieved full employment equilibrium. So potential output equals equilibrium output, and this relates to the line of potential GDP growth in the business cycle, where the economy's output is equal to its potential output. Thanks for listening.